good morning or it's good night maybe for you, Taylor. Thank you for
Yes.
coming on this show. So you reached out after my live where I talked about Twin Flame Police, and today we're going to talk about your journey and dispelling myths because people get confused with the different labels, Twin Flame, Karmic, Soulmate, and you're
Mm.
in touch with your divine masculine and you have a very unique journey as well. So thank you for coming to share it. It takes a lot of guts.
No worries. Absolutely.
So, for viewers that are like new or, to the concept of twin flames, also we just want to understand what your concept is. So, how
Mhm.
would you define a twin flame in your reality?
So, in my experience, I would describe it as an energetic experience which has kind of triggered a mass spiritual awakening. And I feel like the connection itself, like what a twin flame is they're a perfect mirror of you in a sense, but they're just playing that out in another person in front of you. That's how I feel it is. I feel like the reason we really think that they are the other version of us is because I think the signature or the frequency like of the connection is exactly the same. So whether you can say that we are two halves of a soul or however you want to put it, I feel like energetically or vibrationally, we are the exact match of each other.
And how does that differ from soulmates?
So a soulmate connection for me would be someone who is just there to love you and be kind of a companion. They're not someone who would necessarily come in and try and cause any harm or triggering or lessons. I feel like a soulmate is really just like, your pets would be soulmates, right? Or like, those I've got friends that I've been like best friends with since kindergarten, and we're still like best friends now. And they like I've got a very karmic family, so they are my like
Family.
soulmates. They're my, they've been my support like my whole life. So that is what I would describe as someone who's really just loves you for who you are, and you can just be yourself with, and they don't want to change you, you don't want to change them. You're just there helping each other through the journey.
And that's interesting because I think a lot of people get confused, don't they? Because I saw a Tinder advert on YouTube the other day, and it's like, find your twin flame and be in love. And I'm like, it's not like that, is it? So
No.
what about toxic karmic relationships? Because sometimes twin flame is likened to that as well. What is
Yeah,
that?
absolutely. I think you can look, I think at the time that we're experiencing it, especially at the start when we first get activated or awakened, it feels like they're being toxic or because they're not giving you the response that you want. So we automatically deflect and say, well, they're in the wrong. It's not, it's after, so many months or years of healing and you come to an understanding that like it's not, they weren't actually intentionally trying to hurt you at all, but your wounded like perspective of them at that time was, oh my God, they're trying to hurt me, they don't love me, blah blah blah, right? If someone is actively trying to hurt you or upset you or trigger you in a way that feels like it's more damaging than healing, then that would be a very toxic karmic relationship, right? Because they're there to show you the things within yourself that you're still allowing or accepting, right? One thing I will say is your twin will never actively try and really damage or hurt you. They might ignore you. They might do things to like trigger you, like try and, make you jealous, or, they might do things in that, but they would never intentionally try and create more chaos or trauma in your life in that sense.
Yeah, I find with a karmic, it just depletes your energy and it doesn't give
Mm,
you that awakening. Whereas with a twin flame, even if they do trigger you, they usually trigger you because they're trying to save you and protect you and get away from you, and they can be a little bit childish. But as they do that, you up level, you ascend, right? You get better. Whereas a karmic just
hmm
destroys you, essentially. You're not becoming a better.
absolutely. Yeah,
So do you
like
think
so. Yeah.
everyone, hang on,
Sorry, go.
do you think everyone has a twin flame then, or is it rare?
Go. I think it's hard to look if we go back to like you have a look at the ancient scripts, they talk about in the Bible, God made everything in pairs. It's also spoken about in the Quran as well, that everything is made in pairs. I think if we go back to that original concept that, like, we're all made with our own exact pair, then yes, I would say so. I don't think everyone right now on the planet who is incarnated for the specific purpose of what like it is that we're actually doing, because it goes way beyond the connection of just being a twin, right? Like you have such a high energetic vibration and frequency. It's much more than just that connection. Like you guys, like, if you are in that connection, we're here to help heal others and show them that there is a different way of existing that is better than what the new templates of love and unconditional love and things like that. That's what we're here to bring in, right? We're here to not be judgmental. We're here to like say, okay, it's okay that you can have that, and not try and control, because I feel like the old ways of existing in, especially in relationships, where like we had to have dominion over that person, right? Like that was like, you're mine, let's get married and this is yours and you can never like, whereas that's not what a twin flame kind of relationship is about. It's about letting them go through their process and their own experience and then come back and loving them anyways, because you don't have a choice in this, by the way. Like I don't feel like anyone who has gone through this would actively go out and seek this ever again if they had the choice right now. Like it's not something, especially when you're in the thick of it, that you're like, oh, I just can't wait to go through this. It's absolutely not something
But
that I would have thought, that I
yeah,
would be searching for. So I feel like that's a good way to kind of indicate that like maybe you're just trying to get wrapped up in the fairy tale that everyone tries to portray of the twin, because it's not a fairy tale. It's quite a
work,
deep,
hard work.
soul journey, and it's very individual. Like there is that person to be like that mirror for you. I wouldn't go out looking for a twin flame like connection. Like it's yeah. It basically breaks you right down to your most, authentic self. But that involves a lot of work and a lot of unraveling of like stuff that we've kind of piled on top of us to keep us safe as well.
A lot of pain. So let's talk about your journey. So can you tell us when you first met your twin flame, what
Yeah,
emotions, signs, synchronicities, and as
yeah.
you do so, maybe it will help people to understand what to look for as well.
Right. So it's kind of weird. So what happened with me was my kind of big spiritual awakening started happening when COVID happened, right? And during that, I was this freedom fighter, and I'd started a political party, and I'd made connections all over the world, and I'd got a big following, and I was the voice of freedom, and we weren't going to go through this stuff, and in that journey, I met someone who was very spiritual and kind of understood what I was going through, because everyone else around me thought I was, because I was pretty, but I met someone who got me instantly, and he actually at first told me about the concept of what a twin. I had no idea what a twin flame was, right? And but we just vibed. We just had a good vibe, and he told me about it, and I was like, okay, I'll have a look at it. So I had a look at it, and I was like, oh wow, like we kind of had the same energetic, thing. And then that's when I understood what a twin flame was, but I didn't. I was very deeply one of those people who I would look for love and acceptance outside of myself all the time. So by him telling me that, I was automatically one of those like clingy people. I was like, wow, like maybe this is for me. Like I was very alone and I was in a very dark place at that time. So I kind of clung on to that. Oh, maybe we could be this, right? And then he after like a month or 2 months, he was like I have a twin. I'm just saying that this might be something that you like would go through. And I was like, that's a weird thing to say to someone. Anyway, so 2 weeks before I actually met my twin, I started dreaming about this person. This person was coming into my dreams, and it was just kind of like a shadow figure, but it felt very familiar. And I was like, who is this weird, random, like it didn't have a face or anything. It was just like, as you would imagine, like a black shadow figure, right? But this person was visiting me in my dreams like every few, not like probably 2 weeks leading up to me meeting him. He was visiting me, and I didn't know who this man was. And it was just kind of, he was just always there. So I just had got a promotion at my job, and I had become an area manager of a um, petrol station like brand. So I had like probably 200 staff under me at the time. And I was just put into this new store, and it was my second day going there. And like as an area manager, you go do your checks, you meet your managers and whatever. And the meeting of my twin happened, so it happened at work, the day before the 22022022 portal. So very specifically, like I remember that that date because that was the first day he actually messaged me. So the day before I met him, and what happened was I had just walked through the front doors, and I didn't know any of the staff. I didn't know who any, and this guy came out of the kitchen area there, like he was a chef, kind of cooking at the back, just like walked up to me. And you got to remember, he's a casual staff member, and in my position, so we have a store manager, and then we have an area manager. Like I was the area manager, so we didn't really have much to do with the staff. It was more like I would, appraise how the store was going, but I just went to introduce myself. So I didn't know who this person was at all. I was like, it was kind of really out of the character for him to just like walk up to me, and he just had the biggest, weirdest smile on his face, and he's like laughing. And I was talking to the manager, and I was actually quite rude, and I was like, what's he looking at? Why is he smiling, like laughing at me? And she's like, I don't know. Like, and I just looked at him like, I'm like, what's your problem? Like, I'm having a conversation here. It's really rude to come up and interrupt someone when they're talking. And he's like, I just love you. I love your vibe. And I was like, I don't even know who you are. How do you know my vibe? I got here 2 seconds ago. Like, and he just like walked back into the kitchen. And I was like, that was weird. Like, you don't do that. Like, I was his boss's boss, basically. So that was kind of weird. And I asked her, like, what was that about? And she's like, I don't know, maybe he's drunk, like as a joke, because obviously it's strange behavior. So I remember leaving that place and just walking out thinking, like, that was a really weird interaction. Like, but when we locked eyes, and I was like, it was kind of like, why was he just smiling and laughing and walking up to me? He had no reason other than to tell me that he loved my vibe. So then the next day I had to go back and to the store, and he had messaged me, and like obviously a few months later I looked back at the first day he messaged me, and it was this 22nd of the 2nd 2022. And I remember like specifically on that day doing a like a kind of like a manifestation of whatever it was, because it was big portal energy, right? And I remember saying, because I wasn't happy, I was in a relationship when I met my twin. I was in a 5-year relationship. And I remember just saying to myself, like, whatever is like for me, bring it to me. Like, and on that day, like whatever's supposed to happen, like I'm not happy where I am, like make something happen. So it was a very weird kind of thing. I kind of knew what a twin flame, like the concept of one was, but I didn't really look into it. But it was like in that kind of, awareness. A month before I met my twin, I got introduced to the term. No idea what it was, obviously. And then this weird person was visiting me 2 weeks before. Then obviously I met my twin at work, and that was just a weird vibe. And then from that day forward, like the months leading up to that, we just were inseparable. And it was to the point where like I was so unprofessional. I would spend all of my time, like we couldn't like it was, yeah, we just could not separate away from each other. Like I had to go there every day. And then obviously the universe starts putting things in place, like the manager quit. Then I had to manage that store. Like we were being constantly forced into each other's space for that time. And by the way, I was still in a 5-year relationship. And yeah, it was just very strange. So yeah, that's kind of how mine happened.
You know what's interesting is I knew the concept before. I've written books, and the first book I wrote about twin flames. But people have said, oh, if you know about the concept, that means you're not a twin flame before you meet them. But no, you read it, you read it, whatever, but it doesn't make sense, right? It doesn't make sense.
Right.
And I was speaking to
And you
my
don't really care that much, to be honest. Like I didn't really like when he said to me, you might be one, I was like, oh, yeah, probably could, like, like,
you don't
but really
understand.
I wasn't like, oh, I need to meet my twin. It wasn't anything like that. It was kind of like, oh, okay, cool,
But there's
like
people out
whatever.
there who are like that. They're obsessed with meeting their twin. I
But
don't know
yeah,
why.
that's what I'm saying. Like, it's not something that you actually go out and look for. It's you're activated into.
Interestingly, also, I was speaking to my cousin about this, but she's also a twin flame. Before we met our twins, like literally a day or so before, we were thinking about that person, and the signs were coming, the dreams were coming. So similar to your story. Okay,
Hmm.
so what happened after that? Like, So you were in the store, you were together, you were in a 5 year relationship. Did you have
Mm.
separations? Were there any dreams, synchronicities? What was going on? How did it
Right.
click with you
So
that it is a twin?
so obviously you have that instant like, oh my God, I've never I well, so when I met my twin, I had then realized that I didn't even know what love meant or was, right? Because I'm not a mother, so I hadn't experienced that feeling of giving birth or having unconditional love, right? My love was always conditional. My exchanges were always me giving, giving, and giving, and like never receiving, right? So my idea of love was completely different. So at that point, I had been like, I didn't understand like exactly what love even meant. Like I'd never had this feeling before, right? So then after that, it got me questioning, like I was already kind of in a rough patch with the current like person that I was with, for other reasons, just that, I was kind of ascending and going through my own spiritual process, and he was kind of just staying, he was happy staying where he was at. And we just, vibrationally were just apart, right? So the catalyst, so basically meeting my twin after 3 months of us meeting and like having those interactions every day. And it was like, it wasn't romantic, it was like purely platonic. I obviously wanted it to be more, but he was like, nah, we're just best friends. And I'll probably get into that a little bit more afterwards. But like, it was very strictly like, no, I've only ever had one girlfriend in my life. Like he wouldn't even kiss, nothing. Like it was, I was like, I'm in
Quite
love with you. We have to be
professional.
together.
He was being
I
professional.
went I went into like full like crazy, like when you have the first really obsessive stage, and he was kind of like, no, we're just friends, like keep it that way, but I obviously knew there was other stuff. So yeah, anyway, so that triggered me into leaving that 5 year relationship, and I ended up moving back with my parents. And yeah, so obviously you have the honeymoon stage of the period where you guys are like just like wow. And the weird thing for me started like probably a week after me going to the store. We started finishing each other's sentences, like, and I didn't even know this person, right? Like a week before. And then all of a sudden we're like speaking or vibing, and that we were literally finishing each other's sentences at the same time. Or we would think of something and we'd go to like, and that's like, I don't even know you. How is it that we are so like in tune?
Thing.
And I'd
Yeah.
never experienced that before. So that's where it kind of started. I was like, this is freaky. And then obviously, like, he would call me 8 to 10 times a day. We would just constantly, like, I would go there in the morning, and then I'd go do my rounds for my other stores. Then I'd go back there, we'd have lunch, then we'd go hang out. Then he would go, like, we just wanted to be in each other's energy constantly, which was like another weird thing. So then, yeah, after probably 4 months of that, that's when you start noticing, the triggers are coming up.
Okay.
Everything starts, that's when the separation thing happens, and your soul's destroyed basically at that point. It's just the most soul destroying thing ever. But the thing for me was like he was always very clear, like, no, I don't know what this he said to me, if I don't know what this connection is that we have, but I don't want it to be anything more than like, we're best friends basically. And that was upsetting, but at the same time, I was like, I can respect that. I can respect your boundaries. I can respect that you've only ever had one partner, and it's very a sacred thing for you that you would never have sex before marriage. Because I don't know if you know, but my twin is Punjabi, and my husband is Punjabi as well. So yeah, there's a whole thing, and they're very opposite. It's very strange, but and their three major rising, like their three majors, are exactly the same but in opposite, which is even freakier as
What's
well.
your background?
So I'm Australian. My mother's side was have come over from Bulgaria, so I've got European in me, and my dad's side is Welsh and Polish, so I've got European there as well. But I was born here, but my grandparents were born like
Yeah.
European.
All
Yeah.
right. And then so how did you then he wanted to be friends with you, and then what is the
Yeah.
situation now? Because you said that you have a partner now, or
Right. So yeah, obviously, so we had like that the first 8 month separation. You do all the work and you just discover all this stuff, and then we would come back in each other's lives in stages, right? And I was adamant, like because obviously through the process, right, you start having um visions and dreams and like your psychic abilities, you know, your kundalini happens and all your chakras start aligning and you start having unexplainable things. You would call each other and think of like, you know, just the things that happen when you're in a connection, right? The things that can't be explained, that just kind of like weird, or like you can feel them, or like I swear one day I was just chilling on my bed and I literally felt him like orgasming, and you know, like so the unexplainable kind of situations that are happening between, you just know it's them, like it's like, and the constant like they just don't leave, the energy just doesn't leave after that. So um I was always trying to call his bluff. I was like, I know that you love me more than a friend, and I know that you're just like calling bullshit on all of this. Um, but I also know that one day you're going to admit that, you know, you love me more than that. So I'll just wait and I'll just be patient and, you know, but I was very pushy. I was very much like, I know, and you will like come clean eventually. And so yeah, we were kind of back and forth doing this dance, like, you know, for a while. And then I think what happened one day, I decided I was going to start dating again because obviously you go through a stage where like, no, there's I could never be with anyone else and they're the only one for me and blah blah blah. But then you get to a certain point where you're like, actually, I don't like why, what am I waiting for? If I like you get to like a stage, it's like, yeah, I'm probably okay now. Like I've done enough like work on myself where I don't feel like, you know, so like dependent or like, you know, have that emotional avoidant attachment style, whatever it is. You get to a place where it's like, I might start thinking about experiencing different connection then, you know, like why not? So, but I made it very clear to him that I was going to in a way, you know, like it was as we do, we like to trigger each other. And we were living together at the time actually, and just as housemates, but I was like, okay, well, if you don't want to be with me, or if you don't think that your family would accept me, or if there's so many different reasons why we can't be together, then it's fine if I start going on dates and everything, right? That you're going to be okay with that, aren't you? And he's like, yeah, that's fine. Like, you know, even though I know that he'd been talking to our, you know, friends about, you know, potentially trying to convince his family to let us get married. So I went on a date with someone. And I made very, like, you know, I made sure I got dressed and I made sure that he watched me drive off in the car with him. And like we didn't like we just went to the movies or whatever it was, you know, it was like really innocent. We maybe shared a kiss and you know held hands, but that was it. Like he dropped me back home. And I just saw his face, like he was sitting there waiting for me, obviously, like, you know, to walk through the front door. And his face told me everything. So 2 days later, I get a call from him, my twin, and he's like, Taylor, I need to talk to you. Where are you? And I was like, oh, I'm so and so. He's like, all right, come home. We'll meet at the same place. Because there was a really weird times where we would just feel this sudden urge to go home. I would be doing our own things, and we would both just arrive home at the same, like, and I'm talking like literally cars pulling up. And I was like, what are you doing home right now? And he's like, I just felt like I needed to be home. And I was like, yeah, same. I just like, you know, like it's just weird things like that happen, right? So, anyways, he's like, come home, we need to talk. And I was like, okay. And he said to me, like he was trying to joke around. He's like, I've set a date for my marriage. And I was like, huh? You told me you didn't want to get married to anyone ever. And he's like, yeah, I've set a date. And I was fuming. I was just like, how dare you? Like, you know, you're trying to one up me because I went on a date yesterday and now the next day you're getting an arranged marriage. And I just like, you know, left the house and he's like, no, no, wait, wait, wait. He's like, no, no, our marriage. Like, he's like, I've set a date for our marriage. And I was like, huh? Like, it totally took me like blindsided me because obviously for 2.5 years he'd told me that we were never going to get married. I was going to be the godparent to his children though, and that like we were always going to be in each other's lives, but like I was never going to be his wife. He just loved me as a best friend. So, anyways, yeah. So he told me that, and I was like, "Wow, are you serious?" And I said, "All right, what about your parents?" He's like, "We're not going to tell them. We're just going to get married, and we're just not going to tell them, and you know, it's going to be like that." And I was like, "Are you kidding me? You're an only child in an Indian household,
Where did
and
his parents
you're
live
just,
in Australia or India?
well, I can't hear you."
Does his parents live in India or Australia?
Yeah, they live in India. Yeah. So, you know, and they had been pushing him, and like they had tried to arrange a marriage as well, like 6 to 8 months before this is like they tried and it didn't work out. So, um, I was obviously excited. I was like, wow, I can't believe you like you want to get married. Like, let's do it. Okay, I'm keen. And then his mum fell really sick. Like she had a stroke. It was like something happened where she like half of she was paralyzed. So then he obviously had to rush back to India, and go and take care of her, right? So and that all happened within like probably a week and a half of him saying, I want to get married, blah, blah. Then his mum has a paralysis attack. Then he's back in India. So but I'm still in my mind, like, yeah, we're getting married, like it's all cool, blah, blah, blah. But then obviously he had to stay there for a few months. And in this time, I feel like, and I haven't confirmed this yet, but like there are people in his head kind of, oh, so you're gonna find we're gonna find you an Indian bride and blah, 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 blah. So like it's gone from us being in a really good place to all of a sudden we're triggered and we're fighting and stuff again. I'm feeling really insecure. Who are you with? Where are you going? Like, that those types of like of things are coming out again. And so there was one particular day where, and you mind you, like I've had 2.5 years of rejection up until this point. So for me, so we had a fight and he's like, look, I don't want to marry you. We can't get married. I can't be with you. Like it's too much, blah, blah, blah. We're too triggering for each other. It's like that was more devastating than him telling me no for 2.5 years because it was like, finally, you've actually just confirmed everything I knew anyways. But not only that, now you've gone and gotten my hopes up and told me that we're going to get married, and then you've just ripped that away from me and crushed me. So that was kind of it for me. That was the last chance that he was ever going to have access to me again because it was devastating, right? So yeah, I like obviously was devastated about that. But then, like a month later, after that incident happened, that's when my now husband came onto the scene and met him at a new work. And it was extremely weird how that happened because again, like you have those energetic pulls to each other, right? So when he came, he walked past me, and I'd learned to speak a little bit of Punjabi by this stage, right? Obviously, being around the Indian community, I embraced it. I did a lot to try and win my twin over, but it actually just repelled him more, by the way. I did all of this stuff. I tried to learn how to cook the food, learn how to speak the language, wear all the clothes, and he hated every second of it. He's like, if I wanted you to be Indian, I would have just married an Indian. He's like, I like you how you are. He's like, I don't like that you want to speak the language. And he's like, I like that you're Aussie, So that was another thing for me, which was kind of like,
It's really
yeah, that makes,
interesting. That is good to
yeah,
say to everyone is they like you as
yeah.
you are and your authenticity. You don't need to change.
Absolutely. And so because in your mind at that stage you want to be you want to be the perfect version of what you think they want, right? It's you couldn't be further from the truth. So like I was doing all of these things, like it was completely out of my character. Like I was cooking and all this stuff, which really I had no idea about, just to impress him. And really, he was like, "Why are you doing this? I don't want you to. I don't want you to do it. Like it's not impressing me. In fact, I love how you like who you are, how you are. Like I don't. If I wanted to marry an Indian, I would marry an Indian. I was like, oh shit, you know, like I've done all this stuff and he really just loves me like exactly how I am. I don't have to be or do or change anything about me. Like the unconditional love is really just that at a core level. And then when you kind of flip it back and it's like, yeah, like that is the same perspective of me. Like he might completely drive me insane or put me to a point where I just am just like so done. But at the same time, that unconditional love, it never goes, like it doesn't go away. All right. So where are we at? We're at the part where, oh, the past life soulmate who I am now married to, who I kind of got, yeah. Anyways, we'll go into it. So then I was done. I was like, that's it. Like, he's crushed me. Even if he is my twin, whatever, there's like you can't do that to someone, right? It's just too much. So, and because he knew how much obviously it meant to me. I used to write letters and everything. Like I was full on at the start. Like it was, so yeah, I met this guy at work. He came past and he was speaking in Punjabi to his friend on the phone. And he said, like, there's a pretty girl next to me. And I end up turning around. And I said, I know what you just said. And he just like kind of got shocked because obviously I'm a white Aussie girl. Like he's like, how do you know? Um, Anyway, so he got really embarrassed and walked off. So he was a driver at work. We had never met before because I just had done an earlier shift that day and just happened to meet him. But it was a really weird connection. Like it was kind of like instant, like, that you can feel that energy. So I was speaking to the other person I was working with, and I was like, that was a really weird thing. Like, did you see the way he was looking and talking to me? And he's like, oh, I didn't really notice. And then I said in my mind to God, if that person is for me, then send him back. And little did I know, 2 hours later, he came back to the store. And I just was shocked. I was like, no way. Like, that is just too uncanny. And I actually said to him, I wanted to ask for your number, but I needed a sign that, that I should. And he's like,
Did he
yeah, I know, it was
remind
really,
you of your, did he remind you of your twin in any way with any similarities?
no, completely. So, and this is another thing. He was, he would embody every single bit of emotional um, kind of reassurance that I needed from my twin. That's what my husband like embodied. So my twin is a Virgo moon. Okay. If you know what a Virgo moon is, they just are not emotional creatures at all. Like there's just not, they are the most just, they're just, emotion just doesn't exist kind of in a way. It does, but like they're very much, um,
They hide it.
they just, that everything has to be in a certain way. And they're more logical, in a sense, right? But I'm a Sagittarius moon, and like my husband is a Sagittarius moon. So our moon signs are exactly the same. Like we are just like, he understood me in every way on an emotional level. So what I felt like I was not getting from my twin, he fulfilled in every way. Right. So that's what it was for me. It wasn't that he reminded me of him at all. It was that everything that I didn't feel like I was getting from my twin, he embodied, which was a very big lesson for me because it showed me that I was still looking for acceptance and love and um, comfort outside of myself, right? So in that sense, you do find like throughout the journey, you want them just to give you that reassurance. You want them just to give you that love. And you want them just to give you that like emotional, um, that just, I don't know what you would call it.
Confirmation
You
or
just
something?
confirmation, right? You just want them just to be like, but they don't. That's the mirror. Like they don't because the whole purpose of it is you need to give that to yourself, right? But all you want is for them to give it to you. So my twin didn't do that. And then obviously he came along and gave me everything that my twin didn't. And I thought, well, God's blessing me.
No brainer.
God's blessing me with everything because, but like obviously I was mistaken. Because it was very much, the chemistry was so there. It was just like, wow, this fiery. And that's why I wanted to kind of compare that to what I think Kel's going through at the moment, because it does very much sit near the level of like at what a twin in union would you would think would feel like, right?
Okay.
It feeds into that narrative that we tell each other that we actually this is what bliss, this is divine union, this is how it should look, because that person emotionally matches you in every single way, right? Where we know that our twins do not, and that's the whole point of it, is because they are the polar opposite. They're like, we are two halves of the yin and yang or whatever, right? But when you have someone who comes in and matches that exactly, you're like, shit, have I got it wrong this whole time? Like, is it like, like you kind of question everything that you've led up until that point. So, so yeah, so at the first like month of us meeting, we decided we were going to get married, which is just insane, right? I'm just and at this point, I'm just like, what is my life? Like I just never would have imagined any of this ever happening because I didn't even want to marry the guy I was with for 5 years and I didn't want to have kids with him at all. I was just like, hell no, like that's not my thing. All of a sudden, I've got this whole Indian life happening, and there's marriages gone left, right, and center because it's very normal in the Indian mentality or community, just that to just happen. Within a month, you've met them, and that's it. You're going to marry them, and that's how it is. So yeah, it was very intense, very passionate, and then obviously he is definitely a past life soulmate, but also there's a lot of karmic. shit that we've had to clear up in that. Like there's a lot of stuff, and we're still healing through different things, you know. I will say, for example, like we had a chat because he had only just broken up with his girlfriend 3 days before as well. So we almost were like healing. What we would speak about it was we were healing each other. We felt like we were healing each other, but really what we were doing is we were just kind of like I suppose what you would do in an addiction, you would just mask it, right? So we were just each other's buffer, but we didn't actually deal with anything that we had experienced. So his ex, the parents didn't allow for the marriage to happen, which is why they ended up being, you know, breaking up.
Which is mirroring
So
to
she,
the your situation.
yeah, so her parents basically said like, we're not going to allow you to marry him. But instead of her kind of standing up for him and saying like, I'm not going to listen to them, she kind of agreed with the parents, and so that broke his heart. So then, obviously, me coming into his life 3 days later was kind of like, oh my God, you're a gift from God. And then I was kind of like, oh my God, you're a gift from God. Like we
Mm.
were just in that same mindset. Like it had it. So then that's why we got married so quickly. It was like it just must be like
And
that's.
what is the current situation? Like, is it how do people find out the difference between that he's a soulmate and not a twin? Like, is the
So, well,
connection
for
different?
instance, I feel the reason I feel like that had happened is because my twin went through his dark night awakening when I got married. So that spiraled and triggered him into his deep, deep, like, I'm going back to God. He came back and told me that God had confirmed he was a twin. Like, when the whole time he just didn't want to hear anything about it. You know, like he just brushed it all off. And like, so by me getting married and that triggering, like that option being taken away from him now, and me just doing it so quickly because it was so synchronistic the way things happened. His flight back from India was the day before I got married, my twin, the day
Because you know
before.
the DMs assume that you're just going to be sitting at home waiting for them forever.
Absolutely, until they're ready. And that's, I think that was what was that triggered him into like, oh my God, because I told him I was getting married. And he's like, what? Like, what the hell? Like, he was really shocked. But he was in India. And I actually purposely think I tried to do it before he could get back. Like, part of me was like, if he comes back before I get married, he's going to convince me not to. And that I don't want him to have that control. So, in my mind, coming from a pretty unhealed place still, I was like, we're going to do it quickly before he gets back. Because if he gets back, he's gonna talk me out of it.
Trouble. Yeah.
And so, but the funny thing is, he flew back and he didn't know. I didn't tell him the date I was getting married or whatever. He asked me to pick him up from the airport and he wanted to come to my wedding. You know, he's like, oh, I'm coming then. Like I have to come. And I didn't tell
Front
him. And
row,
anyways,
front row seats.
he ended up flying back the day before and helping me set up for my wedding, like blowing the balloons and stuff up from like with me, which was extremely like weird, right?
How did
So,
you
but
feel?
anyways,
How did you feel when he was doing all that? You were okay with it?
no, I wished it was him, obviously still. There was part of me which was in my cockiness, like there was a very egoic part of me which was kind of like, well, you had me and you lost me, and so that's what you have to suffer with, kind of thing. Like it's like now you're
Mm.
gonna watch me move on because he didn't think I was going to ever. Like, you know, they just don't think you're going to ever move on from them. They have this kind of the same way in a sense that we have a knowing that like they definitely love us, even if they are pretending to be platonic
Yeah,
or whatever. We just have this knowing because the unconditional love is from out. We just have this knowing that they love us, whether they are acting out or not. It's there, right? It's just it's you don't have to speak about it sometimes. It's just you know. So in a sense, he just kind of knew that I was never going to move on from him, or you know, I was always going to take him back, even though he did like stupid, shitty things or would
treat
trigger
you
me. He
bad.
just
Yeah,
because I
like a
did,
doormat.
but I did in the past because I allowed it, right? You like I would just let him, you know, not talk to me for 2 or 3 weeks, and then all of a sudden he contacted me, and I just thought it was the best thing ever. Um,
What's the
so
current situation between all of you?
so obviously a lot of karmic stuff happened between me and my husband. I found out that he was again talking back to his ex, and I had completely cut. Like I had gone cold. Like I hadn't
Oh,
spoken to my twin. I took the marriage very seriously at that point. I was like, no, no, like I'm gonna do the right. I'm a very loyal, like we are, right? We just it's just how we
yeah.
are. Like so I think that betrayal and not only that, my psychic and my intuition and everything started like ramping up. And I think like a lot of that was for me to start trusting myself. Um, I had a dream 2 days before, and I woke up and I remember looking at my husband and I was like, it's so weird. I had a dream that you had a girlfriend. Like, and I just said it as like kind of a joke.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's just so weird that, like little did I know he had been messaging his girl, like his ex the whole time. And it wasn't like she didn't know that we had gotten married, and neither did his parents, and neither did her parents. So we'd gotten married. He didn't tell his parents. He didn't tell her parents. And his parents and her parents were behind the scenes arranging for them to get married while we're already married,
Married.
right? And so then I had a dream and I was like, oh, it's so weird. I had a dream he had a girlfriend. I didn't think anything of it. 2 days later, he started acting weird on his phone because he had a few drinks at home. And it was, what you get when you have a few drinks, your movement's slower, you're sloppier. And I had noticed that he was kind of moving his phone away from me like this, like, and I was like, give me your phone right now. Why are you like being weird like that? And I looked and he's calling her baby and all that. And I'm just like, oh, like the biggest dark, like you think you've gone through dark nights of the soul. I was like, there's no way this is happening again. Like I'm
Because you know,
just
I was going
not
to
going to
ask you
be.
this. I've
Hmm.
tried to date and it just doesn't work out. Do you think with twins, we're just doomed for it not to work out with others?
Yeah, I don't. So part of me says yes, part of me says no. I feel like we have certain people that come into our life at different stages, not only to test us, but to see what, like, are we going to repeat the cycle again? Are we going to, like, what have we learned since the
Yeah.
last lesson, right? And so for me, my lesson was I was still looking for love outside of myself, right? I was still like, even though yes, God had sent him to me, but it wasn't for the purpose that I thought it was. It was
Yeah.
for
So
like,
let's
for me,
say,
it sent me into, I went into a full on depression. Like yes, we got like, but I was like I had to go to a counselor because I just, you know what it's like, right? You
it's
think
the
you've done
double
so much
trauma, isn't
healing
it?
work.
The double trauma, because you were kind of
it
almost
do,
trauma
it
bonding.
doubles down. It doubles down because then you stop trusting yourself completely. Like you go from dark night of the soul, dark night of the soul, and then you start repairing that and you start working and doing the work. And then you think you get to a place where you're like, nah, I really know where I'm at and I trust myself. And I think that,
Stable.
I'm having all this psychic stuff happen. Like, I was using tarot cards and stuff like that, like which I still do. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. But I was like back then obsessively. But like, I was like, no, I'm getting all these signs from the universe that this is what's supposed to happen. But I was reading it from a perspective of like how I wanted it to just be. Like I was looking at things really through rose-colored glasses, and like I was looking at things how they should have been. But yes, I was getting all the signs and stuff, but I was thinking that everything was going to be,
Forever.
rosy and but like it wasn't. It was really another thing of like, I don't know, like when I say past life is because like we 100% know that like
Yeah, yeah.
we've been married in another life 100%, like we just know it. So there is that aspect of it. Maybe I had done the same thing to him in a past life, and I had to clear that up in this life. The difference is now though that like we're still actively trying to work on these things. So I don't know if like you could be a karmic and then like kind of heal that trauma, because we're both actively working on bettering ourselves for that connection. If I'm honest with you, I don't think it's going to work out at the end of the day. Like
And what about
there's
your twin?
another,
What's your twin saying?
my my twin's kind of going through this thing where like he did a similar thing to me when I was because I was in India in January. So he did this just to upset me. So he called me and said, I found someone that I'm going to marry. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Well, like I'm married, so obviously, like I can't do anything about it. Like I'm happy for you, blah blah blah. And he's like, oh yeah, but like we're not going to speak after like I get married. Like I'm just going to cut you off completely. And I was like, well, okay, but I didn't do that to you. Like, why would you, and he kind of said a few things were like, well, I can't like speak to, you after I've been married because I wouldn't do that to my wife. And I was like,
Mm,
so he kind of just put me into this category of like our connection didn't mean anything, right? After he just come and told me that he like had been confirmed that, we are twins and that like this,
mm.
he's very much closer to God. Like, and that's another thing I think people like if this person isn't like coming back different every time and like leveling up or coming back with a new awareness or a new consciousness, that's not your twin.
So
Because
tell us about that
as
because
you,
we were talking about healing of them as well. So talk about that as well.
so about who, the twin or the husband?
The twin, you're talking about how they subconsciously heal and stuff.
Right. So that's what, so again, so, and that was another kind of confirmation for me. Like every time we had like a few weeks or a few months separation and I'd done some like, he would always come back with a different perspective or he would always come back with some kind of like, he would like, because he hated to agree with me, but at the same time, he would kind of, the way he would speak to me or the things that he would say was giving me that like, oh my God, like he's like, oh, I've been going to temple every Friday. And it's like, since when do you go to temple? Like, just trying to get back in touch with the spiritual nature of himself. So for me, every time he came back, there was a noticeable difference in energy. Um, there was a few times where like we would always try and fight with each other and trigger each other. I could feel the conscious part of him trying not to bring on those things. You know what I mean? Like you can just tell, like they just, if they don't come back differently, like I said, if they don't keep can like evolving with you as
Sending,
you
yeah,
guys go through these triggers, then you,
not a
like I
twin.
would say, you're not a twin. Like it's not your
Yeah.
twin.
So you mentioned that basically they don't really need to do any work. You do the work and they just subconsciously change. And he said something to you, didn't he, about
That's
that?
how he described it to me. That's how he described it to me. So he said like it. So basically, we were just sitting outside one day, and he's like, "It's really weird, like." I can feel when you're going through a shift because I go through one as well. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, he's like, well, I don't really have to think about doing anything. It just kind of happens that like I'm just more aware of what's happening around me, but I don't actively go out and seek to try and be more aware. And I was like, well, that's some bullshit. That's really
As
like
you do the
annoying.
work, they just automatically feel it, right? And heard clients
Absolutely.
say that. They said they just get the download or they just change and they become
Yes,
a new
right. They
person.
just get that the shift just happens within them unconsciously. So then that for me, it's like that makes sense. We're the conscious twin, they're the unconscious twin, we're they're the sub, if you think about it, they are the subconscious version or energetic frequency of you. That's why the yin and the yang, and it's like we're perfect equals of opposite.
Okay, so I want to talk some other questions now. We've
Mhm.
answered quite a lot, but some metaphysical stuff. So you've talked a lot about, you know, all the signs and the synchronicities and things like that. Do you feel a
Mhm.
certain way with your twin? Because some people talk about time stopping, getting faster, getting slower, being in a different alternate reality dimension or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff has happened, and he's also confirmed. Like we would just be sitting, like our favorite thing to do is we like to go for like long drives, and we go and find a spot to like look up at the stars and like stargaze, or we just listen to random song but like you say, just we just get so lot. Like sometimes we could be gone for like 14 hours, and we're just like how does that even happen? Like he's got work like in 2 hours, and yeah, time just doesn't exist. I think more so when you're with your twin, like that feeling of just like it feels like a bubble. It feels like things around you don't really like nothing around you really matters at all. Like it's kind of like you're in your own little fairyland. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that we are the same vibrational energy, like frequency. So if you think about it, we're just like constantly like, it's very that's I think that's why we repel as well, because it's very intense energy. It's very weird to have someone who feels exactly the same as you, doesn't look like, exactly the same, look, have similarities, but who feels like you, like them, but in a sense, they're not acting how you would act. Do you know what I mean? Like it's very
It
triggering.
amplifies the feeling, doesn't it? The intensity.
Yeah,
So
it does. And it's like in a sense that is why we're so triggered. So there was times where he would say to me, I don't even know why I'm arguing with you right now. Like he's like, I don't even know why I'm I treat you so much differently, or I'm so mean to you. Because I would point out, like, if that was anyone else, you would have done it for them straight away. You would have done blah, blah, blah. And then he would actually say, I don't know why I'm like that with you. Like he couldn't explain. Like it wasn't a conscious thought that he was purposely being like that. It was like he was acting out, like unconsciously. Like he didn't know
unconsciously?
why he was acting like that.
So what healing did you do? Because you said that with the DMs, they don't really need to do it. They just automatically upgrade when we do. So what did you do?
Well, I've had to just go back and just really, I think I went like, I think all of us, it stems from childhood, right? Like that trying to find something, outside of yourself. So I did a lot of inner child stuff. I mean, I have cut off basically all of my family. So then I started going back and revisiting, those things that I had shut off. I was actively facing things which before I didn't allow myself to even think or feel at that stage. I was like, okay. And then I started having a look at, like, so where does this, so if my mum and my dad was so horrible to me, then I started thinking about, like, who made them like why were they like that? And then I started like looking more deeply into their connections, and I started feeling like sorry for them. Do you know what I mean? Like, and when you look from a conscious perspective, you start thinking like, oh my God, they're just acting out their traumas. Like they're really like unconsciously acting out their traumas on you because they don't know any different, because they are also just as messed up, because their parents like are just as messed up, right? So I started really like looking at, like, okay, so how did baby Taylor feel? Like how is she so strong that she has so much love to give everyone, but she never got it, growing up. Like, so then I like made her safe again, like you had to go like really like at a soul level, peel it back, then start looking at, like, where is this patterning and conditioning and stuff. And then that's when you start having compassion and like sympathy, and you're all like, I mean, we're all empathetic, but then you really start to understand, like, where has this all stemmed from, and then you start forgiving. And I think I got to a place where it was like I didn't think I was ever going to forgive my mom, or like, and then I actually felt sorry for them. I started going to a place where it's like, oh my God, like my nana was horrible to my mom. Like she never made her feel important at all. Like my mom had four brothers and she was the only girl and she was the eldest, and she was treated the worst. Like she was just forgotten about, And it's like you start to feel like, I think the healing really started really happening for me was when I was like, oh my God, like we have to just forgive them because they're just like unconsciously just acting
See
out
them as
programming and
children.
shit.
You see them as hurt children. So did your
Yeah.
twin also have similar core wounds as you? Were there any mirroring with that?
Yeah, so he actually the same. He doesn't have a very good, strong bond with his parents either. And not for the terms of like they were really horrible or did like anything abusive. They just like kind of abandoned him. They didn't like he grew up from the age of 3 or 4. He was in what are those schools called where you boarding
Boarding
school.
school.
He
Yeah.
spent his entire life like at, a boarding school, and on holidays he would be sent to his auntie's house. So he really didn't have that deep, loving, stereotypical Indian connection like with his family, like that you would think,
Yeah, normally they smother you,
because
don't they?
usually they smother you to the point of you can't even like,
Do
pick what
anything.
cereal you're gonna have for the day.
Yeah.
You have no option or no choice. Like, it's their
Yeah.
way. Um, but they do it because they love you. But it's like, no, no, like, they're so
Control.
smothering.
Yeah.
But he had the absolute opposite. He didn't really have a good bond with his parents. And like at all. Like it wasn't like they were, it was good, but he didn't, he just would tell me like I don't feel a deep connection with them. Like I haven't even been back to see them in 5 years.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, like just things like that. Do you know, like he's like, oh, I don't even really call him back sometimes, So yeah, he had it, but it was the opposite. So he had turned into a stone hard, cold rock
A lot of them do, yeah. So can we
because
talk a little bit about the DM as well? So
of course,
what do you think his significance is in the journey, in the dynamic? What are their purpose?
I think that like they too have the same like purpose as us. Like my twin is like he's got healing like because I do Reiki as well, like obviously we're all kind of energetic healers. Like he has those same signature like core frequencies as what I do, right? Because if he's like me, so I
So does he
feel
have the
like
same gifts as you do and same abilities and
yeah,
all
so
that?
he can heal me. Like I don't know if it's just me and if he tries to do it on other people, but he like energetically can like I'll just be like in pain or whatever, and he but he is like a bit more like I don't know, it's kind of weird because sometimes I feel like he's teaching me in a way. Like sometimes he will come and say things and I'm just like, huh? Like and
And
so say for instance, he's
profound.
never
They
done
say profound things.
yeah. And like so he's never done any energetic healing or like whatever, but he just like would come up to me sometimes and just like like just do like all this kind of weird stuff, like not the weird, but like just energetic stuff over me. But he was just coming from a completely like raw, like like just and it just well, he would just do it. So yeah, like I feel like in a way, like they do have the same purpose as us, but like their experience is just completely different to ours. Like they're just like they are us in a sense, they are us, but they're just going through the journey. Complete. Can you imagine just going through it completely, like not knowing what's going, like just subconscious, like it's almost like you're
Going with it.
sleepwalking through your ascension, and then all of a sudden you wake up and you're healing people with your hands. Like it's like that for them, right? Um,
Kind of interesting. Yeah.
it is, isn't it? Yeah, I said the same thing. I'm like, so you really just like don't even know why you're like this with me sometimes. It's like, no, I don't
So
know.
has he said anything about whether he thinks about you, whether he gets the dreams, synchronicities? Does he get any of the stuff as well?
He doesn't speak about the dreams. He does speak about like the fact that like he would like if I would call him, he's like, I was just thinking about you, and like it's weird that you just like he gets the numbers, like the seven like all the angel numbers and
Angel
stuff. He gets
numbers.
all of that. Yeah, he gets all of that as well. They don't care as much though. Like it does like he does get that, but sometimes he went through a stage where he would be like, oh, 11, like but they don't care. They're not as invested in it as much as what we are, but it does happen for them. He has like
Why do you think they're not so invested in it? Do you think they're numb
because
to
they're
it
not
or
as because they're not as conscious like of what's happening to them on like at the same level as what we are. Do you know what I
okay.
mean? Like it's still happening to them. They're still experiencing it. But like if you think about it in terms of like masculine and feminine, like the feminine is always more emotionally charged, right? So for us, like we put that, like what gives something charge? It's what we put into it. So like if
We're
we're putting more
intuitive.
emotion,
We're intuitive and they're more instinctual, I think.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they are still intuitive though. Like, like so he kind of looks at me as like, he's like, oh, you're this like woo-woo psychic. That's what he says. Like, like he's like, you just know things. He's like, everything you say just happens. Like, if I do a reading, he's like, it always comes true. Like, how? Like it kind of makes him feel weird about it. But at the same time, I say to him, like, well, hasn't that happened to you, like through your life? Like, haven't you just been right about things? And he's like, yeah, actually, if you think about it, like if I think about it, like my gut instinct has been, but like they just don't think about it as much as what we do. Like if I plant those little seeds, like, well, hang on, like you just decided to go this way home instead of this way, but and like that way there was a car accident, but this way it wasn't. Like it's like, yeah, when you think about it, like, do you know what I mean? Like,
Does
so
he ever get
in the
scared of
masculine,
you? Does he get scared of
yeah,
you?
it freaks him out. Oh yeah, it used to freak him out so much. Like I would be like, oh, I know what you're like, I would just read like this weirdo text like I know you're going through something like really like I hope you're okay. And he would just write back, how do you know? What the hell? Like, like he would just like yeah, it would freak him out. Like he thought that I was maybe like sitting out front of his house or but then obviously as it goes along, like he just understands that like, we have those psychic abilities. Like he's so more open to the fact that we can speak about it now. Whereas the first 2 years he was like, shut it down, shut it down. Like he just wouldn't want to speak about anything. Like
So it's
he's
been
like,
how long for you now? 4 or 5 years or
nah, it's been just over three, maybe 3 years and 3 months or so. It's like, oh, wait, what month are we in now? We're March.
month?
3 years and 1 month because it was the 22. It was around
Okay.
um February of two
So
two.
just the last three questions about wisdom and
Yep.
advice. So what advice would you give to someone who thinks they've met their twin?
Take the focus on as hard as it is to say, and I know like honestly, the actual journey itself, it's about your own awakening. And we always like to try and push on what's the DF, like what's the DM doing, and but all that does is just keeps you in the same looping cycles over and over again. If the more focus you put on them, the more it repels them because they can feel it as well. Don't forget, like they can feel that energetic push. So when we're so much focused, we actually miss the point of what the actual journey is about, and it's about our own spiritual awakening. And for me, I think knowing that he was the subconscious, I could then shift my perspective and say, well, like if that's the case, like yeah, it is really just about me, and like this is my spiritual awakening, and he's just that like not sidekick. That's a bad way to put it. But then I put myself in the position of, well,
The
I'm the
main
main character.
character, main character. Oh yeah, yeah.
I'm the main character and he is just my sidekick, in a sense, because that was what was going on. When I started shifting how I looked at myself in the dynamic and giving myself back that power, then things started shifting in our dynamic. Because then
And
it was really like, did you forget? Like I'm the main character, like, and
leader,
then
you're
you
the
really
leader.
start loving yourself more when you actually like start realizing, yeah, you are. So why am I bothering what he's doing? Like I should be worrying about, and then they start worrying about what you're doing because you're so focused on what you're doing at that point. They're like, well, what are you doing? And it's like, well, what does it matter? I'm happy. Like, I've recently just joined a soccer team, a women's soccer team. Like, I wouldn't do that stuff, but I just did it because like, why not? Like my
Why
friend's like,
not?
come and do it. So, and it shocked the hell out of him. He's like, what? And it's like,
Because you
why does it
start
shock
doing
you?
things that you've never
You
done in your
start
life.
doing things and it's like you stop living your life trying to always chase that, like that. It's not a fairy tale, it's more of a narrative that I think is it's too much like romanticized, even though it's
Yeah,
hard to say, but like
depicted.
really the true spiritual aspect of this experience is about like what are you here to do? Like don't worry about what they're here to do. Like if we can flip it back on like what did Taylor come here to achieve? Like Taylor came
Liberate.
here to fucking kick some ass, to help people, to empower people. Like, Taylor came here to like heal all this bullshit that like no one else in her family could heal. Like, and when you really start feeding back into that power, it becomes like a snowball effect. Things around you start changing because you just have that sense of like love for yourself, because then you start realizing that you are the main character,
And the
and
great thing
like
is when you heal, they heal.
they do that absolutely. And it does show you like, and obviously, the retrogrades and stuff, they obviously help them come back, and they don't even know why they do it, but we know, you know?
So what
So,
last sort of like what's your hopes for the future with this? Where are you going? And I know you do social media. Do you do any inner work with people and healings? Can you tell
so
us about
I was a very much a person that had to control the narrative and how things went, right? And that got me nowhere. I was constantly like Taylor, because Taylor didn't have any control growing up, Taylor had to be always the boss. Taylor had to control how everything, like all the pawns in her life, would work. And the more you would try and control, especially in this situation, the more you try and control shit, the more it just doesn't go the way you want it. And I don't know why that is, but it just seems to be a common reoccurrence. Like the more you try and control the way things should be or the way that you want it to be, the more it's not going to be like that. So I think the surrender part of this process for me was completely release everything or every expectation that you had, because obviously like I didn't expect that I was going to get married like a month, like I didn't expect any of it to happen, right? But it did. And it did also give not only the awakening from my masculine, but it sent me into a deep, like another like full rebirth as well. So I think my intention right now is just to focus on what makes me happy instead of trying to make others happy,
others?
like
Yeah.
so now I'm doing things for me, like I'm thinking about starting up and doing my own, because I do Reiki healing and I do tarot readings for people, but not on a big scale. But I think I'm going to start doing, like, ultimately I want to open up healing centers, and I want to do like, sound meditations and things that like really are going to help people as we start moving through these new cycles. And because you can tell there is a shift in consciousness happening. I can definitely tell just in people around me. And they're going to need people like us who can guide them through it, right? So with these, like for me, I want to focus on really just building up this kind of empire of healing centers or safe places for people to go um, when they don't really know like how to get rid of this trauma or like whatever it is that they're dealing with. Like I would, yeah, at the end of the day, I think I'll start off doing, what I know, but I really would love to build out and
Can you
yeah,
tell
just
us your
have these
social
centers.
media handles as well?
Sorry?
Your social media, what are the handles?
Oh, so look, I don't post too much on TikTok because I actually am not loving the ego stuff that's happening in the community at the moment with all the twin stuff. I'm not loving. There's a lot. I don't know if you know, but there's a lot of different turf like things happening. Not just with like there's been like maybe 4 or 5 different little like tiffs. So I'm not on TikTok as much, but if you do want to speak to me on there, it's Tay Tay. I probably will get back to posting on there, but for now, I'm just like I'm not loving.
I tend to stay
Like we're
away
here
from
to help.
drama. I tend to stay
Yeah,
away from
but we're
drama.
here, like the purpose of us to be here is to like show the new way of being. And like I feel like it's very untwin flame like of everyone to be judging everyone's shit.
There's a lot of
Like I just
judgment.
feel,
A lot of
hmm?
judgment. There's a lot of
Yeah,
judgment.
there is. There is. And like I just am not loving like, or you're a twin or you're like at the end of the day, like we're all having our own individual experiences, but like we are supposed to be the new way of being. And by us getting into these lower like bullshitty catty little things for me it just feels very
It's
like
all
it's not
part
what
of
we're
the
here for.
lessons. It's all part of the lessons because I've spoken to one or two either coaches or even twin flames, and because I normally don't badmouth anyone. Like I've had
Hmm.
people make, what do you call it when they use your clip and they say something and they say that what I said was
Like
bad or
those bites. Yeah.
whatever they do in it. I don't really care because, I tend to focus on my own thing. But I've seen people
Hmm.
change from these lessons, these retrogrades, the judgment is going and it's a lesson. So it's okay. It's all
Maybe
part of
it's
the
a
journey.
collective purge that needs to happen, maybe
Yeah.
it is like, but I feel like the judgment, like why, like does it really matter to you so much what it's not like is it really like does it irritate you that much, like then it just tells me that like what you're not focusing on what's actually important because you're so consumed about what other people like you really you're straying away from what it is like you're really here to do. That's just how I feel
It's
about
where
it.
they're at right now. And
Yeah,
as you get higher and ascend, you no longer are so
you're not even
affected.
consumed about like you're just trying to help, like you're out here just trying to like help people, like you don't really give a shit, like I don't care if Tom's with Arthur or it is what it is. But at the end of the day, as a collective of very awakened, ascended, and powerful souls, I think we have bigger fish to fry than that. Like we're going through a very massive transition on Earth as it is. Like we're not here to be fucking bickering between each other. For God's sake, we should
I
be
mean, I
helping each
understand
other.
some parts of it. I
Mm.
did a Twin Flame Police live because I feel like people are very invested because their journeys have been quite challenging. But not every Twin Flame journey is as challenging. There are nuances. So
They're all completely different. Yeah, that like they are in a sense similar, but they also like are different. We all have our own individual lessons that we have to go through, but they are very similar in a sense. But yeah, anyway, so I'm not posting on TikTok a lot at the moment, but I probably will come back to that. So it's like my handle is Tay Tay. Where else am I on? I've got your YouTube that I haven't really started up
are you on
yet, but that
Instagram?
yes, I do. Yep, it's underscore Tay Evans.
Okay, wonderful.
And then I've got another one which I will start doing, which is Lady of the Stars. So I'm gonna do like a little tarot Reiki type thing on there. So yeah.
Wow, it's been a very enlightening conversation. I appreciate your openness because you've helped to explain that it's not as just black and white and easy as people think, and there are nuances. And
Mm,
with your twin, the journey is still continuing, and
absolutely.
you know,
I honestly don't think it ends, guys. Like I don't think you just like decide one day you're jumping off. Like I don't, and I think it's been proven many times. Like even though you want to try and jump off that train, it's just not like you can get married to other people, you could go like 50,000 times around the earth, and it doesn't change the fact that that person
and the
is
same
your
for the
twin.
DM too, and the same for the DM.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Like, I mean, like he had no reason to say, can you come pick me up other than the fact that I wasn't speaking to him. So he's like, that little, feel sorry for me. I need you to pick me up from the airport, like it's the same for them as well. They just have a harder time admitting it. but they will do it in other ways. Like, it's
I mean, I
frustrating
always
as
tell my
hell.
followers, let them do whatever they're doing. Actually encourage them to do whatever they're doing because the more you control, it backfires.
It does, 100%. And I think that's where a lot of we we go like the DFs go wrong is we try and control the outcome of how the thing's gonna go. Like we have an idea in our mind, like how union should be or how it's going. It's
No,
nothing like you think yeah, it's nothing like you think it's gonna be. Trust me. Like,
let it be.
it's
Let
just
it be.
curveballs are coming at you left, right, and center. Like you just can't, there's no set one pathway. I think the more that we just focus on what it is that we're here to do, you will magnetize that naturally to you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Really
No,
appreciate it.
nice, no worries. And nice to speak to you. And thanks for having me on. And yeah, it was really good to
Yeah, maybe
chat.
we'll have like a revisit in a year's time or so.
Yeah, 100%. Definitely.